War is like weather, a simple English take on why fights keep happening. You know how sometimes it rains out of nowhere, or a storm just pops up when the weather gets all heavy and hot? War is kind of like that. It's not just people being angry or leaders making bad choices, it's like a natural process that happens when certain conditions come together. This isn't just a fancy way of saying things, it's about real science, like the rules that make the world work. Think of it like physics, the same way the sun rises or water boils. War keeps showing up in history, no matter how hard we try to stop it with talks, agreements, or good intentions. Why? Because there are bigger forces at play, like the way energy moves in nature. Let's break it down step by step, using simple words and examples, so you can see how war is less about human mistakes and more about the way our world is built. Imagine your family living together, and suddenly there's a big argument over who gets the last piece of roti or who watches which TV channel. It might seem like a small fight, but sometimes these little things can blow up, right? Similarly, think about two villages needing water from the same well, especially during a dry summer. If the water starts to run low, tensions rise. Everyone needs it to survive, to water their crops, to feed their families. What starts as a discussion can quickly turn into heated words, and then, if not handled well, even a physical confrontation. That's a mini version of how societies can clash when resources become scarce. Or picture a bustling market in India. Everyone is trying to sell their goods, make a living. If suddenly there are too many sellers for too few buyers, or if one seller tries to monopolize everything, you can feel the competition, the stress. Sometimes small arguments break out. War on a global scale is often like that, a massive competition for resources, power or control, where the stakes are incredibly high. History is full of these stories, whether it's ancient battles over fertile lands, empires expanding to control trade routes, or modern nations vying for oil or technological dominance. Take the countless wars fought over the centuries in India itself, from the clashes between ancient kingdoms for control of the Gangetic Plains to the numerous invasions and battles that shaped its diverse landscape. Each conflict in its own way was influenced by underlying pressures, a need for more land, access to trade, or simply the desire for greater power. Even something as devastating as the Kargil War, while seemingly triggered by specific events, occurred within a larger context of historical tensions and territorial disputes. It's almost as if, despite all our advancements, certain conditions consistently lead to the same kind of explosive outcome. We try diplomacy, we sign treaties, we create international bodies like the United Nations, but still, wars erupt. This essay is going to explain why wars happen again and again, using ideas from science, like how energy works in our homes, bodies, and even countries. We'll talk about societies, like countries or cities, as systems that need energy to keep going, just like your phone needs charging. We'll use examples you see every day to make sense of big words like thermodynamics, how energy moves, and entropy, how things get messy. By the end, you'll see why war is not just a human problem, but something that comes from the same rules that make rivers flow or storms form. Let's get started. Societies are like big machines that need energy. Imagine your house. To keep it running, lights on, food cooked, phone charged, you need electricity, gas, or maybe firewood. If the power goes out, everything stops, right? Countries, cities, and even small villages are like that too. They're like big machines that need energy to keep going. This energy doesn't just mean electricity. It's food for people, fuel for cars, money for businesses, and even information to make decisions. Without this energy, everything falls apart. Think about your kitchen, for instance. To cook a simple dal, you need fire, gas, or electricity, ingredients like dal and spices, and your own effort. All of these are forms of energy. If you run out of gas or don't have enough dal, you can't cook. Similarly, a factory needs raw materials, electricity to run machines, and workers to operate them. If any of these energy inputs are missing, production stops. In science, there's a fancy word for this: thermodynamics. Don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Thermodynamics is just the study of how energy moves and changes. Think of boiling water on your stove. You give it heat, energy, and the water turns into steam. That's thermodynamics at work, energy moving from the stove to the water, changing how things are. Societies work the same way. They take in energy like food, oil, or workers' efforts to build things like roads, schools, or armies. For instance, to build the magnificent ancient cities of the Indus Valley civilization, like Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, immense energy was required. This wasn't electricity, but the energy of human labor, organized systems for agriculture to produce food, the power of animals, and the raw materials extracted from the earth. Their thriving civilizations were a result of efficiently channeling these energies. Or consider the construction of a simple hut in a village. It requires wood from trees, mud from the earth, and the physical effort of the villagers. All these are forms of energy being transformed to create something useful. A country needs millions of such small and large energy transformations happening every second to sustain itself. From farmers tilling fields to massive power plants generating electricity, from teachers educating children to soldiers defending borders. Every single activity, big or small, consumes and transforms energy. But here's the catch. When they use this energy, they also create a bit of mess. This mess is called entropy. Entropy is like when your room gets messy after you've been working on a project for hours, papers everywhere, dishes piling up. In nature, things naturally move toward messiness unless you put in energy to keep them organized. For example, if you don't clean your house, it gets dusty and cluttered. Imagine a bustling Indian market by the end of the day. There are vegetable peels, discarded packaging, and general clutter everywhere. That's entropy in action, the natural tendency for things to become disorganized. To clean it up, you need energy, sweepers, waste disposal systems, and the effort to manage it all. Societies are the same. They need to keep using energy to stay organized, building hospitals, fixing roads, or keeping people fed. But when they do this, they create mess like pollution, waste, or even stress between people. This mess gets pushed outside the system, like throwing garbage out of your house. Think of the pollution from factories in industrial cities, or the piles of plastic waste accumulating in landfills near populated areas. This is the entropy produced by our modern, energy-intensive societies. Even the stress and social tensions that build up in overcrowded cities or within diverse populations can be seen as a form of mess or disorganization that needs to be managed. Scientists call societies dissipative structures because they dissipate or spread out this mess to keep themselves running smoothly. A simple example: your body. You eat food, energy, to stay alive and active, but you also produce waste, entropy, that your body gets rid of. If your body couldn't eliminate waste, you'd get sick. Countries do this too. They use resources to grow and build, but they create waste like smoke from factories or tension with neighbors over land or water. When a large dam is built for hydroelectric power, energy, it might displace communities or alter ecosystems downstream, entropy. Or when a country heavily relies on fossil fuels, it produces carbon emissions that affect the global climate. These are the messes that societies produce as a byproduct of their functioning and growth. This idea of needing energy and creating mess is key to understanding why wars happen. When a society can't dissipate its mess internally, meaning it can't manage its waste, its internal tensions, or its resource shortages, it might try to push that mess outwards onto another system, another country. This outward push, often in the form of competition or aggression, can lead to conflict. Why societies want more and more energy? Now let's talk about why countries always seem to want more land, more money, more power. There's a science rule called the maximum power principle. It sounds heavy, but it's simple. The things that use energy the best and fastest tend to stick around longer. Think of two plants in your garden. One grows tall, grabs more sunlight, and spreads its roots to get more water. The other is small and slow. Which one survives better? The tall one, because it's grabbing more energy, sunlight and water to grow. Or imagine a group of kids at a birthday party, and a plate of sweets is put out. The kids who are quickest to reach the plate and grab more sweets will end up with more, right? It's a simple, almost instinctive drive. Countries are like those plants or those kids. They want to grab as much energy as they can: food, oil, workers, or even control over trade routes. Why? Because the more energy they have, the stronger they are. A country with lots of food, fuel, and people can build bigger cities, stronger armies, and better technology. History shows this clearly. Old empires like the Romans or Mughals grew by taking over land and resources. The British Empire, for instance, expanded across the globe precisely because it sought raw materials for its industries and new markets for its goods. They needed cotton from India, spices from the East Indies, and various resources from their colonies to fuel their own economic and industrial growth. This quest for maximum power drove their colonization efforts. Modern countries do it too, with oil, gas, or even data, like controlling the internet. Countries today compete intensely for access to rare earth minerals, which are crucial for electronics or for control over global supply chains. A nation with vast oil reserves or a strong technological sector has a significant advantage in the global landscape because it controls essential energy flows. This isn't just about military might, it's about economic power, influence, and the ability to provide for one's population. A country can't simply stay small or isolated in a world where everyone else is trying to grow. If it doesn't expand its energy base, it risks being outcompeted, losing its ability to feed its people or defend itself. But here's the problem: there's only so much energy to go around. The world has limited land, water, oil, and other stuff. When one country grabs more, another might get less. This creates competition, like two kids fighting over the last piece of cake. Or think of a village where land is limited, and two families both want the fertile plot near the river. If one family expands its farming onto that land, the other family loses out. When countries can't agree on how to share, things get tense. Sometimes, they try to sort it out with talks or trade deals. But when that doesn't work, they might fight. That's where war comes in. It's like a way to rearrange who gets what energy. For example, the ongoing tensions between India and Pakistan over Kashmir, a region rich in water resources and strategic location, can be understood in this light. Both nations see the region as vital to their energy security and strategic interests, leading to a perennial state of competition and occasional conflict. Another historical example is the competition for colonies in Africa by European powers in the 19th century. They weren't just after land, they were after the resources and labor that land provided, fueling a massive imperial race that eventually contributed to two world wars. War in this sense becomes a violent mechanism for resource redistribution when peaceful means fail. War is like a storm breaking out. Let's go back to the weather idea. You know how a storm happens? The air gets hot, humid and heavy. Clouds build up and suddenly, boom, thunder, lightning and rain. It's not like someone chose to make a storm, it just happens when the conditions are right. Think of the monsoon season in India. The heat builds up, the humidity rises, and then, almost predictably, the skies open up. It's a natural release of accumulated energy in the atmosphere. War is similar. It's not always about bad leaders or evil plans. It's about conditions in the world, like not enough resources, too many people, or big differences between countries, coming together until something snaps. In science, this is called a phase transition. Think of water again. When you heat it enough, it changes from liquid to steam. That's a phase transition, a big change when conditions hit a certain point. Or imagine a pressure cooker on your stove. As the heat builds inside, the pressure increases. If it reaches a critical point, the steam valve releases, or worse, the cooker might explode. That's a phase transition, a sudden drastic change in state due to accumulated pressure. War is like that for societies. When there's too much pressure, like not enough food, or two countries wanting the same land, the society boils over into war. It's a way to release that pressure and rearrange things. For example, think of a city where everyone's struggling to get jobs, food is expensive, and people are angry. That's like the air getting heavy before a storm. The discontent, the frustration, the feeling of injustice builds up. If the government can't fix things, people might protest, or worse, fight, leading to riots or civil unrest. On a bigger scale, countries do this too. When they can't get enough resources or feel threatened, they might go to war to fix the problem by taking what they need or pushing others out. The First World War, for instance, wasn't just about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It was the culmination of decades of rising tensions, colonial competition, an arms race, and complex alliances that built up immense pressure, eventually leading to a massive phase transition into global conflict. War as a way to reset things. Here's where it gets interesting. War isn't just destruction. It's also a way to reset things, like pressing restart on a computer when it's frozen. When societies get stuck, maybe they're using resources badly, or there's too much tension, war shakes things up. It's messy and terrible, but it can lead to new ways of doing things. Think of it like cleaning your room. If it's super messy, sometimes you have to throw out old stuff, rearrange furniture, and start fresh. War does that for societies. It can destroy old systems, like an empire that's too big to manage, and make space for new ones. For example, after big wars, new countries or governments often form. The British Empire, weakened significantly by World War II, found it difficult to hold on to its vast colonies. This paved the way for India's independence, a massive reset that created new nations and systems of governance on the subcontinent. Similarly, World War I ended with new borders, new alliances, and even new technologies emerging from the conflict. This happens because war is a way to deal with energy bottlenecks. A bottleneck is like when too many cars try to squeeze through a narrow road, causing a traffic jam. In societies, bottlenecks happen when there's not enough energy, like food, fuel or money, to keep everyone happy, or when the existing distribution of resources becomes inefficient or unfair. War breaks that jam by redistributing stuff, land, resources or power. It's not pretty, but it's how the system keeps moving. Consider the partition of India in 1947. While a tragic event, it was also a forceful reset that attempted to resolve intractable political and religious tensions and resource distribution issues that had accumulated over decades under British rule. New national identities and systems emerged from the chaos. Another example could be the American Civil War, which, despite its immense human cost, ultimately led to the abolition of slavery and a significant reorganization of economic and social structures in the United States. In essence, war in its brutal efficiency forces a re-evaluation and often a violent reallocation of power and resources, clearing the way, albeit tragically, for new arrangements. Societies as systems that evolve. Let's zoom out a bit. Scientists talk about complex systems, things like weather, forests, or even your body, where lots of parts work together in complicated ways. Societies are complex systems too. They have people, governments, economies, and armies, all interacting. These systems don't just sit still, they evolve like a living thing. Think of a village growing into a town, then a city, and eventually a sprawling metropolis like Mumbai or Delhi. Each stage brings new complexities, new demands, and new ways of organizing. In science, there's this idea of a phase space. Don't panic, it's just a way to imagine all the possible ways a system can be. Think of a map where every point is a different version of a country, big, small, rich, poor, peaceful, or at war. Societies move around this map based on things like how much energy they have, how many people, or how much they're fighting with neighbors. For instance, in the historical phase space of India, you can see movements from fragmented regional kingdoms to powerful empires like the Mauryas or Guptas, then periods of fragmentation again, followed by the rise of the Mughals, and eventually colonial rule and the modern independent nation. Each shift represents a change in the state of the system. Sometimes a society hits a spot on this map where things get unstable, like when there's not enough food or too much competition. That's when it might jump to a new state, like war. Scientists call these spots attractor states, places the system naturally moves toward. War is one of those spots. It keeps showing up because it's a natural part of how societies deal with stress and change. For example, think of history. The Roman Empire fell after years of wars and resource problems, eventually fragmenting into smaller entities. New kingdoms popped up, each trying to find its own stable state. World War I happened when countries were competing for power and colonies, and the system became unstable. After it ended, new countries formed, but then World War II came along when tensions built up again, leading to another major jump in the global system. War keeps coming back because it's part of how societies move through this phase space, like a river flowing toward the sea, constantly adapting to the landscape and seeking a new equilibrium, even if that equilibrium is violently achieved. The partition of India, as mentioned, was another dramatic shift in phase space, creating two new nations from one, amidst immense upheaval. Humans aren't fully in control. Now you might think, wait, aren't wars caused by people making bad choices? Well, yes and no. Humans make decisions, but those decisions are shaped by bigger forces. It's like driving a car. You choose where to turn, but you can't go anywhere if there's no fuel. Societies are the same. Leaders might decide to start a war, but they're pushed by things like not enough resources, angry people, or threats from other countries. They are part of the larger system, not entirely outside it. This is where human agency comes in. Agency is just a fancy word for the ability to make choices. But our choices aren't totally free. They're shaped by the world around us, like how much food we have, how safe we feel, or what our neighbors are doing. In science, humans are like tiny parts of a big machine, the society. Each person's choices are connected to the bigger system. For example, consider a leader like Mahatma Gandhi. While his decision to advocate for non-violent resistance was a powerful act of agency, it was also a response to the oppressive conditions of British colonial rule and the widespread yearning for freedom among the Indian populace. He was operating within and reacting to a massive historical and societal pressure cooker. Similarly, a king deciding to attack another country might genuinely believe it's his own strategic genius, but he's also reacting to pressures, like his people are hungry, his treasury is empty, or another country is getting too strong. His brain, his advisors, even his army, are all part of the bigger system, pushing him toward that decision. It's like the system wants war to happen, even if no one person does. Even seemingly simple human emotions like pride or fear, when amplified across millions of people, can become powerful forces that drive entire nations toward conflict. Think about the intense rivalries in cricket matches between India and Pakistan. While it's a game, the underlying historical and nationalistic sentiments can make it feel like a mini-war, reflecting how deeply ingrained these group identities and competitive instincts are within us. Our individual choices are often echoes of the larger systemic pressures at play. Humans are built for this system. Here's a cool fact. Humans aren't just random players in this game. We evolved to fit into these big systems. Think about your body. It's a system that needs food and water to keep going. But you're also part of bigger systems, like your family, your village, or your country. Over thousands of years, humans evolved to survive in these groups, working together to get food, build homes, or fight off enemies. Imagine a tiny ant. It works tirelessly for its colony, carrying food, building tunnels, defending its queen. It doesn't do it because it chooses to, but because its very nature, its instincts, are wired for the survival of the colony. Humans similarly are wired for group survival and cohesion. Our brains are wired to help these systems. That's why we feel things like loyalty, anger, or fear. These feelings push us to protect our group, fight for resources, or compete with others. When a country goes to war, it's like all those human instincts, wanting to win, protect, or survive, get turned up to max. Think of the intense patriotism you see during wartime, or the collective anger directed at an enemy. These emotions aren't just cultural, they're deeply rooted in our evolutionary history as social beings. Soldiers don't just fight because they're told to. They fight because of emotions like duty, loyalty to their comrades, or fear of losing their home and family. Leaders plan wars because they feel pressure to keep their country strong, secure, and prosperous, often driven by the competitive instincts that have been honed over millennia of human social evolution. Even regular people get caught up, cheering for their side or hating the enemy, participating in the collective fervor. Consider the way families stick together through thick and thin, or how communities come together during festivals like Diwali or Eid. This innate ability for group bonding, for collective action, is precisely what allows societies to function, and tragically also what enables them to wage war. All of this comes from how humans evolved to keep their systems, like tribes or countries, alive and strong. We are, in a sense, biological components of these complex societal machines, contributing to their energy flows and their eventual, often violent phase transitions. Why war keeps coming back? So why does war keep happening, no matter how much we try to stop it? It's because of those big forces we talked about: energy, competition, and the way societies work. Just like storms keep coming back when the weather gets heavy, wars happen when societies hit those tipping points. It's a cyclical pattern, not a random event.